Jey Uso just captured his first singles championship in WWE. From being just a tag team partner to his rise and breakout during the entire Bloodline story arc, Jey finally gets his opportunity, wins the Intercontinental Championship against Bron Breaker on Raw. This match I love, and we're gonna break down this whole thing, plus where do we go from here? That's what's always exciting to me to talk about, is when we have a change like this. Okay, the match, I loved it. I thought that the beginning, the build of it, and I'm talking like weeks ago, I love that last week we had the promo between Jey and Bron Breakker, and I felt like that really elevated this feud. With Jey winning the tournament to become #1 contender, that felt like almost a foregone conclusion, but I gotta tell you, for weeks I thought Jey is just going to go into the main event match, lose to Breaker because he's main event Jey Uso, but he often loses. And they finally gave him a title win. This was needed, necessary, much deserved, and it adds more credibility to Jey now that he is truly main event Jey Uso. I think he needed to do this with WWE. I think that if they didn't do this, you run the risk of fans not necessarily turning on Jey, but getting tired of it, of him almost getting to the top and then never succeeding. I love the build during Monday Night Raw of how much of a big deal this was going to be. Multiple segments, multiple moments backstage. You had Sami and Jey interacting together. You had Jey getting hyped up way before his match was even going to happen. All of that to build to this main event match. It felt like a main event. It felt like a big deal. This is when I think WWE does some of their better work, is when they build a title match to the main event over the course of a 3-hour Raw. That's personally what I like with the builds. More memorable matches and moments for me with WWE, and specifically on like week-to-week TV, is when they're gonna do a title match, but they build the thing throughout the show. It feels bigger, it feels more important once you finally get to that main event, and then you get the payoff. It wasn't the build of everyone cheering and hoping for Jey to go out there and go win the title, and then he falls short. You can't tell that story with that much going into it, that much investment and emphasis on it. The match itself, great. Jey Uso is not a 5-star match person, ladies and gentlemen, but from what Jey did and his partner Bron Breakker, give Bron a ton of credit, because moments in this thing, all of the power slams and big moves and spears and momentum created by Bron Breakker, that guy is a star. And I saw more of that, I felt like, when Bron was getting backstage interview moments in the match of facial expressions by Bron Breakker coming up short, getting very cocky and arrogant that he could just decimate Jey Uso. This felt like, yes, Jey wins the title, that's awesome. For Bron, I felt like this was so good for him. Losing the title sucks, but for his character, it means more growth. And Bron Breakker's character since NXT and the title over there, it's been about him losing matches, feuds, figuring out what he needs to do to overcome it, get to the next level. This guy's been in main roster WWE for less than a year. Already Intercontinental Champion, putting on really great matches with Ilya and now Jey Uso. Bron gets reactions from the crowd too, when he barks for the dogs. The crowd does it too. I think Bron is going to go a very long way in WWE. Knowing Triple H with his booking style now, a lot of stuff is slow burns and slow builds, and that's okay. You don't want to super shoot Bron now to the world title scene, but man, in like a year, I think that you could see Bron Breakker as world champion, giving fans like Brock Lesnar, Mick Goldberg, Scott Steiner vibes. Dominant, jacked heel that the crowd eventually just ends up appreciating for the work he does. Because again, the back and forth in this match, thought it was outstanding. The other piece that I really loved with this match, it was the commentary. Joe Tessitore has won me over. And commentary is personal preference and style. Some people will be like, he's boring, or I don't like him, or whatever. But just from where I'm sitting as a fan, I thought he really broke out and shined in this match with his commentary. The big peak moments, like especially towards the finish and the false finishes, Joe really was able to exemplify the urgency, the stress of it, how big of a moment it is, how big of a match this is. He really, to me, made this feel like a main event with the commentary. It added to it instead of it taking away from the match. I was able to thoroughly enjoy it, and I felt like Joe's commentary was like, I think he finally found his groove. The first week with him, I thought was rocky, but whatever, it's his first week. But this match now, going through this episode of Raw, I felt like his personality really shined across the 3 hours, but the main event especially. You could hear like the screams, the graveliness, like the stretch in his voice and his vocals to make you feel like this is important and this really matters. So anyways, I got to give it to the commentary team because it added to the entire moment, that entire main event. So with Jey winning the Intercontinental Championship, what happens next? Where does he go from here? Where does Bron Breaker go from here? Contenders, feuds, what are we going to be looking at? Let's first start it with Bron Breaker. I gotta think that a rematch is going to happen between him and Jey. And for the type of match that they put on here, really, I like, give that to me like a PLE, please. I think with this type of match, you could give us Bron versus Jey one more time at Crown Jewel. It's ahead of Survivor Series. It's probably a big marquee match. Fans love Jey, and new Intercontinental Champion, show him off and put him there. I totally see that as one of the big marquee matches for that show. And they could just do it all over again. Where are you gonna have Jey lose the title? No, you're gonna have maybe a wonk finish. Maybe if you're gonna do Crown Jewel, maybe that's when you are gonna get bloodline interference. Get Jacob Fatu, Solo. Maybe they kind of screw things up for Jey, causing a disqualification, but he retains the title. Something like that. Because you don't want Bron to lose clean once again. You gotta keep him strong. The other thing they could do is that Bron is just getting way more aggressive, way more angry because he lost the title, so that he might cause himself a disqualification. And then Bron's got to figure things out and climb back up, and he goes off on a mean streak. I'm very curious what they will do with Bron Breaker now, because he's got a ton of momentum. He's getting better on the mic, and his matches are just improving every single time. So I mean, I could see Bron going up against Jey once again. He could do the rematches with Ilya, but I think you want to put him against more faces. I don't want to see him going up against Sammy. A program with Seth would be great for Bron Breaker when he comes back. I feel like because Bron is now at that IC title division, that level, I mean, down the road a little bit, I think Sheamus and Bron just going off, just having smashed up matches against each other, that could really work. Keeping him going with the feud with Jey could be good, because I think those guys have really good chemistry together from what we have seen up to this point. And then a little bit further away, I mean, I think Bron's got like no ceiling here. Draft next year might help a lot to be able to mix up the rosters. But with the current talent on Raw and going into January, like I said, Seth would be great. Could do Sheamus, Jey, keep that going. I mean, Punk versus Bron would be pretty cool if you wanted to go that path. You know, maybe later into next year, into 2025. Having the grizzled old veteran and CM Punk having to go up against this new, strong, young talent in Bron Breaker, and like Punk loses. But what about opponents for Jey? Main event, Jey Uso, yeet. The Bron rematch, yeah, Crown Jewel, I think makes a lot of sense. But what about, and what do you guys think about Survivor Series? What's going to happen there? Because I think that's what a lot of people are waiting to see. We're gonna have the tag team match of Bad Blood, where you got Roman and Cody going up against Bloodline. And it really feels like they are going to get to Survivor Series War Games. And by all accounts, it would just make sense that you're going to have Team Cody Roman going up against Bloodline. It's who does Cody and Roman recruit? Is it going to be Jimmy and Jey? Is it going to be Jimmy and Jey and Sammy? Is it not? Is it going to be Jimmy and Kevin Owens, Randy Orton? Like, I don't know. Like, they could do different combinations. The most sense and obvious thing is to get the old bloodline back together. Is it rushed though? I don't know. I think that they want to, and WWE wants to get to these big moments. What's interesting is that if they do War Games with old bloodline versus new bloodline, Jimmy and Jey reunite, but you have Intercontinental Champion Jey Uso, the moments between him and Roman would be really cool to see, because then you have Jey coming back and coming face to face with Roman after everything that has happened, and Jey is able to then stand there and say, I did this on my own. I became a champion on my own without you, without Roman, and he didn't need him. It's a cool story thread that they can tell there. Roman's current character and that whole cinematic thing he did with Cody, he talked about Jimmy, he talked about Paul Heyman, he didn't talk about Jey, because Roman's character is still in like current mindset, still like heel-ish Roman, and he knows that Jey turned his back in his mind and left them. But I wonder if they get to Survivor Series and Jey's motivation for going to side and team with Roman is less to do with Roman, but more with his alliance and friendship with Cody being buddies, being tag team champions, Cody being the one to advocate for Jey to come over to Monday Night Raw and start main event Jey Uso like on his own. It's a lot to do with Cody. And then the obvious piece of Jimmy and Jey reuniting. And you have the element of Sami Zayn there, where maybe it is Jey and Sami deciding together to work with Cody and go and do the War Games match. And then Jimmy and Roman and Paul Heyman have to kind of get on the same page. But outside of that, you got to get other opponents for Jey if he's going to hold on to the IC title for a while. Like if he is going to hold it on till the Rumble or Mania, you need other feuds. And I think that you have a lot of good options with Jey. He's going to be a fun Intercontinental Champion as long as they can kind of keep him booked the right way and give him enough big heels where he has to overcome the odds. I think that's what Jey needs. Like Bron Breaker has been great because it's shown more vulnerability and that Jey really has to defy the odds here. Bronson Reed, I think, is another one. You're gonna get a last monster standing match between him, Bronson Reed, and Braun Strowman. Braun match. Bronson Reed comes out ahead on that, and he's already taken out Seth Rollins. He's gonna take out Braun Strowman. He's taken out R-Truth. He's going through a lot of the roster there. Bronson Reed being built as that monster, and if he wins that match against Braun Strowman, Bronson Reed for the Intercontinental title against Jey is a really cool match and really hard for Jey to overcome the odds there. You could tell that program for a couple of months. Sami and Jey is interesting because Sami is trying to go after Gunther and the world title. I don't see him spinning down to go after the Intercontinental title against like his friend Jey Uso. Maybe they have friendly match on Raw, you never know, but I don't see that dynamic happening. Dominic Mysterio is another person that I think should go after Jey Uso in the IC title because you have all of this connections and history now of Jey and Judgment Day. You could do Finn versus Jey for the IC title. You could do Dom versus Jey. It would be interesting though, and I'm saying like a little ways down the road, Dominic Mysterio picks up the Intercontinental title because he can't and couldn't have done it against Bron Breaker. It didn't make any sense. But Dom being the character that he is, it'd be kind of cool to see if maybe, and I'm saying like a while, he takes the IC title off of Jey. Jey is so beloved by fans. Dominic is despised. And you get world champion Liv Morgan and Intercontinental champion Dom Mysterio. You can then do more cool matches and cool dynamics of Rhea and Jey teaming up to go after the two of them. You can do mixed tag team matches, and then you could get Jey to get that Intercontinental title back. I think a program with Judgment Day still and Dom going against Jey Uso, that could really work because Dom is the sidekick to Liv in a lot of this and dealing with Rhea and turning on her. And Jey has been involved in all this. It's even more motivation to keep that going. Plus, it could really help keep the Judgment Day story that they are doing here, pushing it all the way to like WrestleMania. Because you never know. Maybe it's like Jey versus Dom at Mania for the IC title. And Jey wins it back, and then Rhea versus Liv at Mania, and Rhea wins that belt. But what did you think of the main event of Raw? I wish it was that Bad Blood. I'm nitpicking here, but that's just me as a fan. I wish it was at a pay-per-view, but I did love the build from the beginning of the show all the way to the main event. I'm happy for Jey Uso, yeet.